Hey, everybody. On today's show, you will do not want to miss this. Jim and I had the honor and privilege, and I mean that 100%,
Yeah, exactly.
to interview Commander Dan O'Shea. Many of you may know who Dan O'Shea is. I'm not sure, but he's certainly made the circuit across CNN and MSNBC and Fox News as what would be a hostage expert. He's a Navy SEAL who's dealt with terrorists and rescues, and over his long, storied career, he is here to tell us all about that, about the conflict that's going on over in Israel, what should be done. Folks, I'm telling you, probably the best hour I've ever spent talking to somebody, and I could have done it all day long. So stay tuned for that, right, Jim?
Went by really fast.
Oh, super quick. Amazing individual and true patriot of this nation. So stay tuned for that. Plus a few other things we're going to talk about here on what, Jim?
Two guys.
Yes.
One go.
You right again.
Welcome to the Two Guys, One Coup podcast with Dale and Jim, where the truth matters and progressives' feelings don't. We bring you the facts from the perspective of two average, everyday guys who will never apologize for being America first, for adhering to our great Constitution, and for saluting the flag that our brothers and sisters have fought and died for. And now, here's Dale and Jim.
Jim, you're so smart.
I am.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you're right on cue, right on. And for such, the first show of the week. And,
we Mensa we Mensa group have to get together.
I'm sorry, you menstruating what?
Mensa.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's right. Well, you wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know. Is that close to NAMBLA? Is that
no. Oh, this is a highly intelligent group of people.
Oh, it is.
I think it's with an IQ over a certain amount. And
I know what Mensa is.
Trust me. You and I could combine, maybe could qualify for that. I don't know.
I don't know if we add ours together.
That's what I said. Maybe.
I
mean, my 42 and your 120. We might get there.
Oh, hey, thank you for the compliment. Anyways, folks, listen, stay tuned for that interview. You do not want to miss it. I mean it 100%. It's the one you're going to want to hear. Trust us. On top of that, what else we got going on today, Jim? I want to start with a little story.
Future NBA star here.
Well, it's not the one I'm starting with, but we're getting there. We're getting to future NBA star and presumptive nominee for the Democratic presidential run. We'll get to Gavin Newsom in a minute. But this story I thought was very interesting. Joe Biden, I don't know if you saw this or not, sold a house for $1.2 million in 1996. You did see this story?
Mm-hmm.
And nearly 3 decades later, it's still only worth $1.65 million. So I tell this story due to the fact that Donald Trump is in court daily about
hourly
about minute by minute about the appraisal value of Mar-a-Lago. And so listen to this. Joe Biden sold a house to a supporter for $1.2 million in 1996.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing wrong with that. You could sell a house to whoever you want.
Yeah.
But it's only worth an estimated $1.65 million 27 years later. The current valuation raised questions over whether Biden received an inflated price for the property from a donor nearly 3 decades ago. It was purchased by an executive for a credit card company that, in the same year, also hired Hunter Biden and then paid him for years. I'm sure it's all on the up and up, folks. All speculation here. Biden bought the 10,000 square foot mansion in Greenville, Delaware for $185,000 in 1974. Good deal, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, he had recently become a senator on a salary of $42,500 per year.
Doable.
Yes, doable at that price for $185,000. Absolutely. He went on to sell the house for $1.2 million, more than 6 times what he paid for it in 1996. Okay, makes sense. However, according to property website Redfin, it is currently only worth $1.6 million in 2023. Zillow has it currently valued at $2 million. And this is why people should not trust Zillow for one reason. They're setting the market price, and it's obviously higher than the appraised price of it. Yep. Both Redfin and Zillow have an average error rate in valuations of only around 7%. Since 1996, the Delaware housing market has nearly tripled. According to data from the U.S. Federal Housing Finance Agency, that would indicate if the house was worth $1.2 million in 1996, it should be well over $3 million now. That's pretty simple math. Even us non-Mensa folks can figure that one out, right? Even at the higher current estimate of $2 million for the home, if its value tracked with the test or the rest of the Delaware housing market, would be expected to have been worth around $700,000 in 1996. Built in 1930, the house features 5 bedrooms, 3 fireplaces, a colonial-style exterior, a swimming pool, and a pool house set on 2 acres. Biden called it the station, and it was the headquarters for his first presidential campaign in 1988 when he dropped out after being caught plagiarizing the British politician Neil Kinnock in a speech. The story of how Biden sold the mansion was a minor controversy in Delaware politics in the 1990s when he was a senator. He sold it for the asking price of $1.2 million to the vice chairman of credit card company MBNA, at the time the largest employer in Delaware. In the same year, MBNA employees contributed $62,850 to Biden for his Senate reelection campaign, and the House buyer donated the maximum $2,000. Also that year, Biden's son Hunter was hired by MBNA and went on to become a senior vice president. Later, between 2001 and 2005, Hunter was rehired as a consultant by the company on a monthly retainer. During those years, Joe Biden backed new bankruptcy legislation in Congress that would benefit credit card companies, even though it was opposed by a majority of the Senate Democrats, including the Messiah, Barack Obama. At this time of the controversial House sale in 1996, a pollster for Biden's Republican opponent in the Senate reelection race suggested that the price paid for the House had been too high. That was denied by both Biden and MBNA. Of course, it was denied. I'm almost done here. I know I'm dragging on, but a Biden spokesman said at the time that Biden had purchased the property when it was in a distressed sale. The spokesman said over the 21 years that the Biden family lived in the home, they made considerable renovations. There was absolutely no connection between the sale and campaign contributions or votes by Senator Biden, and no one should dare suggest otherwise, Jim. Those words alone tell me that they've reached the target. Don't you dare suggest otherwise, Jim, that anything is going on here and Hunter was once again hired as a favor to the big guy.
Oh, yeah.
MBNA also provided to the American Spectator magazine an appraisal from January 1996 that put the value of the property at $1.2 million. However, the News Journal, a newspaper in Wilmington, went on to report that the appraisal listed as comparable properties 2 houses valued at just over $1 million. Both of those properties failed to meet their asking price by more than $200,000, while Biden got the full list price back then. Mm-hmm. Well, there you have it.
I sold
the sale of the house provided.
I sold my first house for 2.6. So
yeah, but it was
1,000.
But it's worth 1.4. So the sale of the house, when everything's gone up, the sale of the house provided a boost for Biden's buying and selling of homes. 1 month later, he bought a 4-acre parcel of land nearby from a local property developer for $350,000. The News Journal reported that was exactly the same amount that the developer had bought it for 5 years earlier. The developer told the newspaper the property market was soft when he sold the land to Biden. Biden built a house on the land next to a lake, which is now valued at around $1.5 million. In June 2017, he bought a beach house in Delaware for $2.75 million in cash. Folks, clearly this is Trump's fault.
Yeah.
Whoa, what's that, Jim? Is that your stomach crawling?
Sorry.
There she goes, little Bella.
There she goes.
Good watchdog.
Incredible.
Good watchdog. Now, Jim, do you want to talk about the future president of the United States? Anybody see this nonsense?
This is a bad play, but I guarantee you, nobody sees it on CNN or MSNBC.
Oh no, I guarantee it. Jim, I don't know if you saw the video. I think we've probably all seen the video.
I actually saw it happen. Yeah.
Oh,
I didn't.
Correct.
Yeah, so I've seen it.
Correct. That video. I have one here, and we'll play it here in a second. But this is most likely your nominee. Why did he go to China, Jim? Let me ask you.
Getting himself ready.
No. Getting himself ready. Why else would he go?
He's going to be president.
Why would he go to China and meet with Xi Jinping?
Mm-hmm.
I love that name, though. I got to be honest with you. I'm no communist.
See, the Democrat
or the nice ring to it.
Look, the communists love the Democrat Party now. They love them.
Oh boy!
And why do they? Because they want to become it.
Well, and there's kickbacks, and there's
look,
we speculate.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident.
Yeah, I think we all are. We're pretty confident. Pretty confident. But Russia did interfere with the 2016 election.
Yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. California Governor Gavin Newsom and future potential president of these United States plowed over a child during a basketball game in communist China, then bizarrely spanked the kid as he tried to recover from the ball. Now, the video I'm going to show you is not the one that's out there. It's the one I could find that I could download. You know me, Jim. I have to find the ones that I can actually play. But here's that video. You'll get the whole gist of it all. Take a look at it.
Oh no.
All right.
He plowed him over. All right.
Kid took a charge, didn't he?
I mean, he took the charge. I mean, it's clearly a foul. I'm sure that kid was just flopping like LeBron James. I'm sure it was not as bad as it looked.
Can I ask you a question?
What an idiot.
Why would you go all out like that against kids? Have you ever done that against? No. I usually let them win.
Yeah, I let them steal the ball. I'm first of all, I'm not. You see him like spinning the basketball, and he's just like, oh, Gavin Newsom, he's an everyday guy. He's our hero. Guys, listen.
I'm telling you right now, I have a bad feeling that he's going to be president.
Do you really think the other 49 states are all behind Gavin Newsom?
It doesn't matter.
Oh, cheating?
Well, okay, let's just throw that out. Let's just throw that out.
Throw that out.
He's winning Washington, Oregon. He's winning those, right?
Oh, he is. New York.
He's going to win Illinois. He'll win New York. He'll probably win Pennsylvania. He'll win
most
all
likely
the other,
Minnesota.
Yeah, he'll win all the other shit, right? He's just going to. And
probably Arizona.
I don't understand the love affair for this guy. The sad thing is, guys, he scares me. He reminds me a lot of when Clinton ran.
Yeah, I know.
Young guy.
Yeah, I get that. At the time, though, and throughout his presidency, Clinton wasn't the worst president we certainly had.
No, because he actually worked with the Republican.
Well, he had to, and he knew he had to, and he did, until he got that bluey under the desk from Monica. But at that point,
ironically, while he was talking to Arafat.
Maybe he was saying yes, sir, instead they thought Yasser.
Yes.
Like, yes, sir. You know, I meant Yasser. I mean, he's over there because he's going the rounds. He's trying to, make sure that he is going to be the guy.
He's
the guy.
Yeah, everybody's saying it's because he's presidential, and I do think it's presidential, but I think it's also the same thing as that. Hey, I'm going to do the same thing that Biden's doing. So work with me.
What if there's a Newsom Michelle Obama ticket? How's that play out?
You don't want to. I sorry that's who runs this country.
Gavin and Mike.
That's who runs the country. Whether it's fair election or not, which and I hate to be this naysayer, but I think the days of the United States having a fair and free election is gone.
It's far, it's gone.
The left will not lose control, and I want to add, the left will not only lose control of it, the rhinos who don't want to go to a conservative country, where we actually made the people were happy making money. And the only
Bush
people
Republicans now.
The only people that weren't happy were the ones that were told you're not happy.
Yeah, exactly.
That you can't. During Trump's presidency, guys, you couldn't say, "Oh, no jobs available." You couldn't say high unemployment. You couldn't say I can't get a house. You couldn't say I can't afford a loan, because everything was going really well. So they had to come up with one thing.
Mm-hmm.
He's a racist. So it pitted the black people against Trump, and he did more for the black people than Obama did.
Yeah, but they've seen right through that. That's for sure. So that didn't work, right? I mean, they kept going and going and going. They brought COVID in, and now we're seeing. You see what's going on around the world. We got, mobs at a Russia airport supporting Palestine, attacking Jews, and folks. This is Nazi Germany stuff. Yeah. You understand? It's worse than that. Now there's a report that they actually saw a baby who was cooked in an oven. I don't know if you saw that story or not.
I don't even. It's
so. I mean, this is what the world's come to. This is what This is what. To me, the fraud of an election has created in this world. So, but go on, Jim. What do you got to add here?
Well, that just leads me into this, folks.
Okay.
You heard what Dale said, and then you've always heard of the atrocities going around. Well, it depends on what station you listen to.
Yeah, that's right.
Because some news, I'm not lying either when I say this, some news sources are only giving you the deaths of the Palestinians. Yes. They're not giving you the deaths of the Israelis. No. Anyway. Resolution 771, by the way, if anybody doesn't know it, Resolution 771 is a simple resolution that the House put through to condemn Hamas.
Oh, makes sense.
Condemn Hamas.
Yep.
For the slaughter of the Israelis on October 7th. Oh, you would think 100%, right?
100%, minus the 7 or 8 squads.
Folks,
members.
Here are the numbers who did not. And I want to read them. And if they are in your area, they should be voted out immediately. Mm-hmm. This is a resolution to condemn Hamas. That was it. Wasn't money. There was no money involved in this thing. It's just saying that we support the people of Israel against the terrorist attack. Right.
Correct.
Jamal Brown of New York.
Shocking.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York. AOC for people in San Francisco. Cori Bush, Missouri. Rashida Tlaib, Michigan. Wow. That surprised me. Summer Lee of Pennsylvania. Ilhan Omar, Minnesota.
Another shocking.
And here's this is a disappointment big time. Andre Carson, Indiana. Al Green, Texas. Good singer.
Good singer, though.
Delia Ramirez, Illinois. Yeah. Joaquin Castro, Texas.
Wow.
Chai Garcia, Illinois. Nydia Velasquez, New York. Premia Jayapal, Washington.
Are there any Americans in this?
Greg Kassar, Texas. Okay. Ayanna Presley, Massachusetts. Now, those final Joaquin, Chai, Nadia, Pramelia, Greg, and Iana voted present. So they voted against the resolution.
They voted
folks.
against it.
That's all this.
Did it not pass? It passed though, right?
Well, yeah, those were the only ones that.
Those were the only ones. Okay.
Yeah,
those were the only ones. So that's what I was asking. I'm sorry, I didn't know.
But yeah, it's guys.
Those are the ones that voted against it. And will their constituents have the balls to ask them why?
No, because their constituents probably feel the same way.
Well, look at, where Omar is. It's basically a Somalian refugee up in Minnesota now. It has been.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't I don't know a lot of these individuals, but I can tell you.
You know the squads. You know the squad members.
Yep. And I can tell you that they don't like America.
Nope.
But
that's treasonous to me. It's treasonous behavior.
With what they've done, it's treasonous. And if I can go one step further,
you may.
With Representative Rashida Tlaib. In a recent investigation, folks, watchdog group Canary Mission has leveled a serious allegations of Representative Rashida Tlaib, Democrat, Michigan, claiming that she has extensive fundraising ties to Hamas supporters.
Imagine that.
And hired activists with connections to the terrorist organization for her 2018 campaign fundraising efforts. Now, this should not surprise anybody, but this is on paper. So I want to go. Well, anyway, the Congresswoman had previously been accused of anti-Semitism and has attracted, first of all, she is, but anyway, has attracted criticism of her for unwillingness to remove a social media post that implicated Israel in a Palestinian Islamic Jihad attack on Al Ali Arab Hospital in northern Gaza. You know, the one that was proven that it was a misfired missile from Hamas?
Correct.
She still claims that it was not.
Yes.
According to the Canary Mission, one of the individuals Tlaib employed for her campaign fundraising has served 8 months in prison for alleged connections to Hamas. Additionally, the watchdog accused Tlaib of utilizing a pro-terror Facebook page, PAC USA, to amass funds for her 2018 campaign election. Going back to 2015, Canary Mission states that Tlaib co-founded a Detroit-based group known as Black for Palestine, described an anti-American, anti-Israeli, and pro-terror group. I'm not going to go in because I just want to point this out. This is the second worst thing to come out of Michigan since the stealing of signs. Sorry, that was another. That was for Dale. Anyway, guys, she is not. How people like this can be elected to the United States Congress.
It is beyond.
With the hatred, the vitriol hatred of the United States.
Yes.
And she's not the only one. So they're elected with people knowing she hates the United States.
Yep.
So their districts that they're at hate the United States.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Either that, Jim, or these folks were put in there.
Well,
via the election.
I think Omar
might have happened at the time. I mean,
Dinesh D'Souza actually proved Omar was put in there.
Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, I'm telling you, folks, this is insane. Now go on.
No, just for everybody that is sitting back. I mean, Facebook had it best. Yeah, I know. I don't like going on it, but when I do, they showed the average American. They were sitting on a chair, sleeping while they're watching television, while the chair was on fire.
Correct. Yep.
That's what the majority of the American people are doing in this country.
They are. And you know what? You know what they're doing over in Israel? We're about to show you. And then it's going to go right into our interview with Commander Dan O'Shea. Again, amazing individual. Just amazing individual.
The people that we've interviewed on this show, all of them have been phenomenal. All of them have. And I don't want to rate, and I'm not going to rate who is better and who it isn't.
No.
But
no. It's the subject matter changes. But
I never thought in my life that I would meet people, like what I've met. I've met great people in my personal life. Okay, great people, but not in a large scale. They're great people from just who they are.
We're very fortunate.
Who they are.
Yep.
And Dan O'Shea is definitely one.
He's right up there
for everything that he has done for this country. I mean, and again,
we didn't even get into that. Really, I mean, we didn't really get into the depth of it all because of the subject we were on. But I mean, it's he will come back, and I'm going to say, Commander, you got an hour. I want to hear all your stories. We all need to hear all of your stories. He's absolutely
SEAL
amazing.
Team 3, guys. SEAL Team 3.
SEAL Team 3,
and
folks.
That's something I think if you and I went to Navy SEAL training, okay, Buds, I think we call Buds.
Laughing at you.
I think we could make it for the first 3 weeks.
Oh, I don't.
I'd ring the bell the first day.
I would ring it before I got there. I'd ring it on the way to the airport.
You want me to do what?
you want, I'm sorry. What's involved in this? You're right. Yeah. I mean, they are the greatest of the great, and he is one of them. So
because if you even if you thought, right, because none of us really knew. We watched the movies of the SEALs and stuff, and then when Soul Survivor came out, where Marcus Luttrell survived, then you got to see a little bit of Bud's training and all of that stuff that go through it. And guys, that's only what they show you.
Yeah,
I mean, the log, they're carrying the log, they're laying in the water, and this is why we need what we need, and for people to not respect them by siding with groups like Hamas, where our American soldiers were killed by people from Hamas.
Yep, exactly.
And Hezbollah and all these others. So Dan, phenomenal guy.
Phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. But first, before we get into that, I have a video. We have a video. I'm sorry, Jim, that we want to show you of a Jewish American family living in Israel whose son was kidnapped on October 7th, and what they're dealing with. And that really goes to the point of what Jim had said about what he saw on Facebook about, Americans sitting on a chair watching TV while the chair's on fire. And we really, we could say we know what's going on, but the reason I'm playing this, and it's long, it's 10 minutes long, but every minute of it is worth listening to, because it'll give you absolutely an idea of what they went through, not just this family, but that family, and then everybody else who was kidnapped, killed, family members, loved ones, tortured, beaten, raped, slaughtered, beheaded. It'll really give you it affected me that way, at least. So I wanted to play that right before we get right into the interview. So sit back and listen to that. Stay tuned for our interview with Commander O'Shea, and Jim and I will be back to wrap this up.
My name is Rachel, and I am the mother of Hirsch Goldberg Poland. He's my eldest child and my only son. The last time I saw Hirsch was on Friday night, October 6th. We are Americans and Israeli, and we live in Jerusalem with Hirsch and our 2 daughters. We had gone as a family to synagogue and then to dinner at our friend's house. And at 11 p.m., Hirsch took his backpack he had brought with him, kissed me and kissed John, and headed out to meet one of his childhood friends whose name was Honor. And they were going to go to an all-night nature music festival in the south of Israel, ironically called the Festival of Unity and Love. The next morning, I was having a cup of tea when the bomb sirens started to blare in Jerusalem. John had already left for synagogue. I quickly woke my 2 daughters, and we went into our bomb shelter in our apartment. After 10 minutes, we came out, and although normally I don't use my phone on the Jewish Sabbath, because it was an emergency, I turned on my phone to make sure that Hirsch and Honor were okay. That was at 8:20 Saturday morning. Immediately, 2 texts popped up on my screen from 8:11. The first text said, "I love you," and the second said, "I'm sorry." And I immediately knew something horrible was unfolding in my world. We came to find out what happened. When the massacre that ultimately killed close to 300 at that music festival and more than 1,400 people total, when that massacre began, Hirsch, Honor, and 27 others managed to escape to a roadside bomb shelter and hid inside. Hamas militants came to the doorway and began throwing in hand grenades, which all witnesses with whom we have spoken said that Honor managed to pick up 8 of them and throw them back out. But 3 of those hand grenades did get by and detonated inside. Next, Hamas fired into this small concrete room of 29 music lovers, an RPG, and then sprayed the room with machine gun fire. After a couple of moments of the dust settling, Hamas entered. Most of those young people were now dead. Some were alive and wounded and trapped under the dead bodies, so they pretended to be dead. It is from those witnesses that we know that Hirsch and 2 other young men were ordered to stand, and when Hirsch stood up, they all saw that his left arm had been blown off from the elbow. He had somehow managed to put on some sort of tourniquet or bandage and walked out with the other 2 young men. They were loaded onto a Hamas pickup truck and headed toward Gaza. Hirsch's last cell phone signal was found inside of Gaza at 10:25 in the morning on October 7th. And since then, we have been given a video showing Hirsch getting into that truck with a bloody stump where his left arm used to be. And that was 18 days ago. And since then, we know nothing. We have begged the Red Cross from all other international humanitarian aid organizations to find out if the hostages, who are from 33 different countries around the world, who were severely wounded like Hirsch, were they treated? The grandmothers, the babies, or 17-year-old Ruth Perez, who has myotonic dystrophy and was stolen from her wheelchair from the music festival without her feeding tube. But our pleas came to no avail. The Red Cross said they were at the border, but they were denied access into Gaza. So here I live, in a different universe than all of you. You are right there. We seem like we live in the same place, but I, like all of the mothers and all of the fathers and wives and husbands and children and brothers and sisters and loved ones of the stolen, we all actually live on a different planet. And the very cruelest of questions each of us is asked every single day without intended malice is, how are you? Well, picture your own mother, and then picture her being told there are only 2 options. You are either dead, or you had your arm blown off and were kidnapped by gunpoint into Gaza and no one knows where you are, or if you bled to death in that pickup truck 18 days ago, or if you died yesterday, or if you died 5 minutes ago. Picture your own mother, and that those are her only 2 options. And that is my answer to you when you ask, how are you? That is how all of us here on our planet feel, this planet of beyond pain, our planet of no sleep, our planet of despair, our planet of tears. There are over 200 hostages being held in Gaza right now. Over 100 of them are from 33 countries. Where is the world? We, the families of the 200 hostages, are far away on our own planet of agony. But where are you? Why is no one crying out for these people to be allowed access to the Red Cross? Why is no one demanding just proof of life? This is a global humanitarian catastrophe. And the hatred being showered on Israel now, I keep being asked by that in all of the press, and I will say 2 things. First, in an article I read, it was so eloquently stated that when you only get outraged when one side's babies are killed, then your moral compass is broken and your humanity is broken. And therefore, in your quiet moments alone, all of us everywhere on planet Earth need to really ask ourselves, do I aspire to be human, or am I swept up in the enticing and delicious world of hatred? This is not a phenomenon unique to Israel or Gaza. This is everywhere on our planet. I understand that hatred of the other, whoever we decide that other is seductive, sensuous, and most importantly, it's easy. Hatred is easy. But hatred is not actually helpful, nor is it constructive. Second, I know that Israel is being cautious, not just because Israel knows there are 200 hostages who were stolen into Gaza on October 7th, but also because Israel knows there are 2 million Palestinian civilians who are trapped in Gaza. And this is why Israel gives warnings to civilians in Gaza to relocate before they strike. But there were no warnings given to the women, the children, the elderly, the music lovers, and the babies on October 7th before the intentional massacres on innocent lives. We all know that war and conflict always ends up hurting the innocent. And that is why war is so brutal. And it is why it's so very devastating. We see that everywhere in our world and everywhere in the history of our world. And a competition of pain, there is never a winner. One thing gave me a whisper of hope from all of the horror on October 7th, because one of the witnesses with whom I spoke told me that when the rocket fire first began and all of those young music-loving hippies went running into the bomb shelter, there was a Bedouin man who was a guard at the kibbutz across the street, and he ran into that same shelter for cover. And as Hamas closed in on the bomb shelter, the man told the young people, "Shh, stay quiet. Let me go talk to them." And he went outside and he said in Arabic, "I'm a Muslim. Everyone inside is my family. We are Muslim. You don't have to search in there." He tried to save them. He could have just said, "I'm a Muslim," and just saved himself. But he tried to do the right thing, even though it was terrifying, and even though it required unimaginable courage. He was brutally beaten, and the witnesses do not know what his fate was. But I take comfort for a fleeting moment, knowing that there was someone trying to do the right thing when everything in the universe had been turned upside down. We human beings have been blessed with the gifts of intellect, creativity, insight, and perception. Why are we not using it to solve global conflicts all over the world? Because doing this is hard, and it takes fortitude, imagination, grit, risk, and hope. So instead, we opt for hatred, because hatred is so comfortable, so familiar, and so very, very easy. I implore world leaders, both seen and unseen, who have been working tirelessly to get all the hostages free. I beseech you on behalf of all people everywhere to remain steadfast, determined, and tenacious, and may God be with you, because the time is running out to save them. The time is running out to save all of us.
It is a great honor, and I mean that honestly, for us to have on the show Commander Dan O'Shea. A little bit about Commander Dan O'Shea. You might have seen him, I'm sure, on Fox, on CNN. He's made the circuit. He's been around for a long time, but he's a qualified SEAL officer, a 1991 graduate of the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. Briefly, and this is the Cliff Notes version because this could go on for a long time. In the 90s, he deployed to the Middle East numerous times as a platoon and task unit commander with SEAL Team 3. He left active duty in 1998. He's earned a master's degree in executive leadership. But following the attacks on 9/11, he immediately volunteered to return to active duty and served as a Special Operation Forces advisor to General Tommy Franks and the U.S. Central Command headquarters during the wartime planning and execution of Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom. At the end here, after about 2 years of active duty, Dan accepted a final assignment to help establish the interagency coordination effort at the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, Iraq. Tasked by the Deputy Chief of Mission, he established and served as the coordinator of the Hostage Working Group, the U.S. mission's primary planning facilitator, intelligence fusion node, and coordinating element for all hostage-taking incidents in Iraq. And that's kind of where we want to go at this point. Again, two people to thank. First of all, you for coming on the show. Again, it is a great honor. And our mutual friend, Wayne Black, for setting this up and allowing this to happen. Dan, real quick, with the hostages, and we've all seen the footage that's going on over in Israel with the attacks from Hamas. Recently, they released some American hostages. You think that's a good plan for Hamas, and I agree. But tell our listeners and viewers why that is a good plan that Hamas did that, and what should they do next?
Well, the fact that they gave up the hostages early on is a very positive step, just because many of these cases, these hostages are held for weeks, months, and sometimes years, especially by these groups in that region. Hamas has been at the kidnapping game as long as anyone. In fact, if I could just give a little bit of historical perspective,
Please.
This whole hostage terrorism got started in obviously the 1979 overthrow of the American embassy. We know the story. 51 Americans were held for 444 days. And for those of us who remember, and I see some fellow graybeards here, every night, right, they'd have the day, right? And they would always make an announcement every night. Tom Brokaw and Peter Jennings, and they always talk about, day 347 of the hostage crisis. So it's part of that why they do this, because the media and exposure and the constant reporting, it's what fuels terrorism, because they get exposure. And, I, as you said, I went to Baghdad in the summer of 2004 and ended up, literally first day on the job, I was handed a kidnapping case by the deputy. It was the Pole Mill ambassador. And this was July of 2004. And literally, if you recall in time, about 3 weeks prior before I got there, an American named Nick Berg had been captured and then beheaded by AMZ, and it aired on Al Jazeera. And it was shocking. It wasn't the first beheading. There was the Daniel Pearl, but this actually aired on Al Jazeera, and it was a wake-up call. It was a seminal moment, because they literally showed an execution on TV, and it went around the world. And I got to Baghdad not a month after that had happened, and there had been a huge turnover between the Civil Provisional Authority, Ambassador Paul Bremer, who represented the Department of Defense. Ambassador Necropani came in and brought in a lot of State Department folks to take over the senior piece. And they were still dealing with this hostage crisis. And I literally showed up at the U.S. Embassy. I was in an interagency job. I had flown from Tampa and I actually brought in FBI agents. So I was flying in with the, quote, interagency team. And our job was to do coordination between the FBI, Department of Justice, the Department of State, and the intelligence community, the agency basically, and the, of course, Department of Defense. And that was our job. And so I was in a interagency role. I had all the badges to go to all the different buildings. And first day on the job, I go to a morning meeting with an ambassador, and the meeting kicked off with, two Bulgarian truck drivers were kidnapped in Mosul 10 days ago. Some guy named Zarqawi says he's going to cut their heads off unless the Bulgarians pull their troops out. President Bush spoke to the president of Bulgaria this morning and said, "You're a valued member of the coalition. We will do everything we can to rescue your hostages." He said 2 envoys are flying in today. They land at noon at Baghdad International Airport. We're going to have them here by 1 o'clock. We need to brief them and tell them everything the U.S. is doing to save the lives of these 2 hostages. And the State Department guy looked at the only military guy in the room and said, quote, "Dan, you're a Navy SEAL. Go call your friends." And that was the start of this, what became a 2-year and now 20-year quest to learn everything I can about this insidious groups of Hadi groups, and do this intentionally because it's so effective. It was effective in the 1979 embassy overthrow. And then we had the Lebanon crisis where 50 plus foreigners, mostly Westerners, were kidnapped and targeted for exchanges. And the same thing. It's again, I say this all the time. Hostage terrorism is how jihadist groups and rogue nation states like North Korea and even Russia, it's how they negotiate with the West. And it's important because it is so effective. And you can't imagine how, of those 220 odd folks still being held, those 10, I'm presuming they're Jewish Americans, right? But they're Jewish. Yeah. That blue passport is going to save their life, if anything, only because of the blue passport. Because Hamas is trying to pressure the U.S. and world opinion against the IDF to continue the onslaught into Gaza, right? That's why they grab these hostages, because right now the only bargaining tool they have are those hostages plus world opinion, and they're using the hostages to focus world opinion, and it's happening, and it's very effective.
Wow.
Dan, let me ask you this. We'll come back to what's going on right now in Israel because it's just horrible, and you're obviously the expert. But we had a situation, right, where recently Americans were released, or hostages were released from Iran. and they were. You can say they were gifted $6 billion. I get it. They're saying it really wasn't. That it was money held by the South Koreans for oil and stuff. But either way, now Dale and I had our opinions. We talked about it on our show, one of the shows, and we just felt that shouldn't have been done. That was a little bit too much. What would happen? But we're not experts. So for us to say that it's easy because we're sitting right here. We're not talking to these horrible individuals. We're like you've been involved with this. So if you can tell us, I don't know how much you could go into this, but was that the right play, or do you think there could have been some other things done?
I have stood by my position. U.S. policy, let's put this out there. Everyone has always assumed that U.S. policy was we don't negotiate with terrorists. That's not U.S. policy. In fact, it probably never has been. And I want to go back to 1972. I'm pretty sure it was Nixon era, and we had an embassy in Africa. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but we had the deputy chief of mission, I think the public affairs officer, and another American were grabbed by a terrorist group. The vice president was walking somewhere and got a camera in his face and a microphone and asked, "What are you going to do about the hostages?" Because they're demanding, they wanted to negotiate. And the senior U.S., I think the VP said, "We don't negotiate with terrorists," and then left. The next day, the deputy chief of mission and the other Americans, they were murdered. They were executed. So U.S. policy has never been, we don't negotiate with terrorists. That's been the presumption. Yeah. But the reality has been, our policy was for many, many years, we do not make concessions to terrorism. And all the way through my time in Iraq and Afghanistan, as horrific as the kidnapping crisis was, we were not targeted. Generally speaking, Americans, they were targeted by Al-Qaeda, who wanted to just murder people, but we were targeted for the monetary value, because much of the industry, even in Iraq, even within these jihadist groups, they were criminal groups, and they were targeting people for their nationality. Specifically, they wanted to make money. And most of the kidnapping industry in Iraq, even outside of the high-profile beheading videos that Al-Qaeda put out, but most of the kidnapping rings in Iraq were in it for money, and they realized the Americans don't pay. Neither did the Brits and the Canadians. So they didn't target them. They did target the French, the Italians, the Germans, because guess what? They paid ransoms. And so that policy changed, not in the Biden administration, it changed under Obama. And Obama did what I consider catastrophic mistakes to exactly your point. He not only negotiated and, the Bo Bergdahl release, the soldier that walked out of the post, put up charges of desertion for 5 senior ranking Al-Qaeda and Taliban leaders. It's the equivalent of trading, literally, the bios on the guys he traded were like, one was the head of their intelligence, so it'd be like trading the head of the CIA, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the J3, and it was insane. And this guy was a lowly soldier who walked off his post. And I get it that they traded for him, and you got to do everything you can to get these people back, especially Americans. But in reality, Obama announced this from the White House lawn. Brought Bergdahl's parents up. I couldn't believe it. He just announced to the world that America makes concessions to terrorism. And from that point forward, a year or two later, I don't even know the timeline, but there were 3 or 4 Iranian Americans, same scenario that just happened with the $6 billion you're referring to. This was under Obama's administration. There were Americans that were released after a payment of $400 million on pallets, cash, euros and American dollars, were flown into Tehran. And one of the Iranian Americans they were literally sitting on the runway for hours, and they didn't take off until that plane landed. So yes, we pay concessions. So our notion that we don't make concessions to terrorism, and so the $6 billion, not $6 million. You can do a lot with $6 billion. Trust me.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Region. You can buy a lot of ammo, a lot of AK-47 rounds. Maybe not Tikkushka rockets, but you can buy enough to take on launch an insurgency for $6 million. $6 billion. And even if they are, quote, going to spend it for a humanitarian effort, which the Iranian officials have already said they're not, well, that gives you $6 billion to folk that you would have to donate to humanitarian relief. Now doesn't need to go there. So now they can go to funding terrorism, which we all know Iran is the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. Correct. So now we have a $6 billion blank check to used for other things, because part of the strength and power of Hamas in particular, they do, they're skimming money off the top, but they purport to do humanitarian things as well. So that money that we gave to Iran, guess what, is going to be paying off that rebuilding that's going to be going on in Gaza when this conflict ends. That is going to be U.S. taxpayer dollars, of the $100 million just announced by Biden. But that $6 billion, again, it wasn't our money. Like you said, it was oil stuff that was held in. So I get that notion, but you still gave you gave a big blank check to a terrorist organization who, oh, by the way, while we were giving that money and making that announcement, guess what the Iranians were doing? Training the Hamas terrorists who just pulled off the most horrific massacre. Good God, in decades.
In decades.
I was going to ask you, do you think it's just coincidence, or do you think this had something to do with that, or or really it's really not? It's not associated, but I just thought it was too coincidental that here we are, they get this, and then boom, here they go.
It is very ironic, isn't it? I mean, what I don't understand about the Biden and the Democratic Party is they constantly are pushing towards reconciliation with Iran. Now, listen, the Sunnis are just as bad on certain levels, right? Al Qaeda, they're Sunni, but this notion that we can somehow make conciliation to Tehran is just absurd. They're responsible for more deaths. Ultimately, Iran and their proxies and all the terrorists they have funded and sponsored around the world, Iran is not a good partner. I mean, we should be focusing on not so propping up the regime, there's plenty of Iranians in Iran that hate the regime. I guarantee you. I was in California. I knew a number of Iranian friends in California that they hated the Shah. They hated the mullahs. They're very Westernist. And you talk to a Persian, don't call them an Arab.
That's right.
They've been co-opted like all these. It's the Taliban. It's this fervent rush to this, wanting to go back and embrace a book written in the 7th century from all of them, from the Taliban to Hamas to, and again, people say, oh, it's a death cult. No, these guys are believers. They are jihadist believers. Right. They believe in their cause. And in some cases, they're running countries, and one of which is run by a theocracy right now.
Yeah, exactly. So when we talk about an organization like Hamas and a country like Iran, how do you, or how can you, not negotiate with them, but rescue hostages, or make sure that you're able to at least get hostages out without an all-out ground war or attack on there and risking civilian lives or even risking hostages' lives? It has to be almost all financial at this point because of the moves that the Obama administration's made and frankly what Biden administration has continued doing. They're going to hold them until you pay up. So is there any negotiating other than financial with these people?
Well, ironically, I keep getting introduced in the last week or two by all these networks, and half of them keeps calling me a hostage negotiator. And yes, I do negotiation behind the scenes, but not in the realm of, and I'm not a negotiator. I'm not a trained negotiator. In fact, I try and tell them, hey, SEALs, we don't negotiate with terrorists. I mean,
correct.
That's what we do, and that's what our mission set is on a hostage rescue scenario. In reality, most American kidnapping incidents around the world, their option of getting you home publicly is going to be a rescue mission by a special mission unit. I know who those guys are. They're the most capable force in the world. We have the longest arms, the longest legs to do these things, but it's very challenging. Iraq, we had 150,000 U.S. troops. We had 25,000 contractors. We had every special operation unit on planet Earth operating, and we had every support from satellites to intelligence agencies and the rest. And of the 448 kidnappings, I need to go back and check, but I'm pretty sure it was 44 Americans taken hostage. And in my 22 months, take a guess how many hostage rescue missions were pulled off. Just take it from the Americans. Of the 44 Americans taken hostage, guess how many were rescued?
I can't even fathom a guess. I'd like to think all 44, but I don't know.
What about you? What do you think?
I would say 40 on the low side, probably.
We had one deliberate hostage rescue mission, successful hostage rescue mission in Iraq. One.
Wow.
One. Now, 60-odd%, I think 65%, I have to go back and look at my stats, but the vast majority of Americans were murdered by the groups that grabbed them, especially Al-Qaeda. Some groups were released through a little bit of money exchange, not a lot, because the U.S. doesn't pay any ransom. Now, governments pay ransom, and certain groups would expect that, like we had one kidnapping ring. So what made us effective, what made my group effective is I worked for the ambassador, and the ambassador reports when someone was kidnapped, say an Italian or French or whoever, they'd reach out to the U.S. ambassador. So I met with heads of state for, every country, because there were 70-odd countries. 70 countries had someone kidnapped in Iraq over my 2 years. So I'm meeting with, senior officials, either the ambassador himself or his head of their intelligence organization or their head of the special ops. And we coordinated, and I looked at everything. Call it Daniel Patrick O'Shea, so obviously you guys know I'm Catholic. And I grew up with a very universal view of the world, right? Evil is evil, black is white, and what have you. And I took every kidnapping case personal. I interviewed more Iraqis, unfortunately, who had kidnapped family members, but they would come to my office or I'd go to theirs. I'd bring an interpreter and we'd spend 3-4 hours sometimes, and I'd get all this intelligence because I took it all personal. I looked at everyone and thought, there's the hostage victim is someone's father, uncle, brother, son, daughter in some cases, or wife. That didn't happen. It was mostly men that were targeted. But I took every case personally, so I was able to get this broad scope and brush of understanding the bigger scope, because ultimately the groups targeting and targeting foreigners and or local Iraqis, guess what? They were also targeting Americans. And that's what made us so effective, in that we looked at it in a universal light. But in reality, your only option for the American was for U.S. forces to go get there. And, well, we didn't have a lot of hostage rescue missions. Trust me, the boys went out on more than one occasion, and putting pressure sometimes got these hostage relief as well. But people do not realize just how hard it is to pull off a hostage rescue mission. They've seen the movie. They think it's really easy.
Sure.
A hostage rescue requires only 3 things. Number 1, proof of life. You want to make sure the hostage is still alive, so you don't risk forces to go after a body. Number 2, a 10-digit grid. And when I mean 10-digit grid, I mean you want to know what room and what house on what floor in that building, in that neighborhood. Not just, it's in that complex or it's in that building, or no. Because the key to a successful hostage rescue mission, and in a place like the Middle East, presumably an armed guard with an AK standing outside the room or over the hostage's head, as soon as they hear anything, the first thing they're going to do, they know they're about to die because it's jihad, they're going to kill the hostage. So having a stealthy insertion or infiltration is critical. And you can only get that if you know exactly where you're going. Last, and sometimes the hardest to get, because we have the capability. Our guys can do anything. Our special operations truly are the tip of the spear. But the hardest thing to get many times was the authorities to launch the mission. And those decisions are made by generals, ambassadors, and presidents. And many times those they will not give the green light, because you never get 100% intel. You never have a quote 10-digit grid. Sometimes you just have to launch and hope that someone, that the hostage is still alive and hasn't been moved. So hostage rescue is the most complex thing. It's the most important thing. You talk to any operator, they'll all tell you, if I could pull off anything in fact, the one American that got rescued, Roy Helms, who was a Navy veteran. It's so crazy because Roy and I are still friends to this day. And not 6 months ago, I was introduced to a unit guy, a former Army Special Forces Special Mission Unit guy, who came to my house, and we ended up cracking a couple bourbons and old fashions and some cigars. It turned out he was on the Roy Helms mission, which was incredible.
Wow.
And he told me, he goes, Dan, I did over 400 missions in my career. Bringing an American home meant more to me than any other mission I did in my entire unit. And the beautiful thing, I got to put those two in comms via email, and they got on a phone conversation a day or two later. And even, these 13 years later, that operator said, that mission meant more to me. That's the one mission that stuck with me over that long tour in Iraq.
Wow. Yeah.
So we all want to do it. We all want to go save an innocent, right? And but it's just challenging because it's very hard. Hostage rescue missions are so hard to pull off. We have the capability. We've pulled it off. We proved it with the Maersk, Alabama, Captain Phillips. He was just in Tampa 2 weeks ago with the lead sniper on the mission, who happened to be a guy I did 2 platoons with back at Team 3. and who's been at the business his whole career. He went the long walk, and he was still operational until about a year ago, and he's my age. So that should give you some idea about
Sure. Yeah.
some guys are truly, they are, it's that, and I'll quote it, of every 100 men, 10 shouldn't even be there.
Yeah.
80 are nothing but targets. I'm reading this quote right above me. 80 are nothing but targets. 9 are the real fighters. We're lucky to have them. They make the battle. But the one of them is a warrior, and he will bring the others back.
Yeah.
And that's a quote from Heracles, the Roman general. I'm sure pronounced.
Mm-hmm.
But truly,
Wow.
I had the honor. I was a part of that paragraph, but I was not there. I know guys that were that one, and those are those special guys that truly they have the capability to pull these missions off, and they train for it. It's what they live for. But hostage rescue is a no-fail mission. You either bring all the hostages home safely, all the operators home safely. Hopefully, all the tangos on the target are eliminated. But it's hard to do that. It's hard, and like Gaza, so densely packed, there are so few options for hostage rescue because this tunneling system, right? This spider. We haven't seen that since Vietnam. When we send the jungle rats in, and jungle rats were going down to go find VC command posts and maybe kill guys in, but they weren't doing hostage rescue in those tunnels of Vietnam. So there's so many challenges to this. How are we going to get those Americans back? And it will likely be backdoor negotiations. I think that $100 million announced by the president should be tied to the release of all Americans and all non-combatants for that matter. So there are not a lot of hostage rescue options for the folks in Gaza because obviously when the ground offensive goes in, they
froze up a little bit. Is that true, Jim?
Yeah.
If you can hear us, Dan. Oh, there you go. You're back.
I gotcha. But so Gaza presents challenges. In my 20 years of studying specifically hostage rescue in the whole scenario, it will be a challenge. And if they can pull off any rescue of anyone, be it the IDF or our special operations forces, it will be a miracle.
That's what
Dan,
I thought. Wow.
Dan, first of all, I want to thank you for what you've done, what you've done in your career, what you've done for service for this country, because Dale and I can do this because of people like you. I mean, I know you probably hear it all the time, but we appreciate our veterans. We appreciate our police officers. I have a son that's a police officer. So we appreciate our first responders, and we will never turn our back on them. So first of all, thank you for that. Thank you for your service. When hostages get taken, how is communication made? I mean, what because I don't think there's a 1-800 number that somebody calls, right? So how, as soon as these hostages were taken, do they contact either Israel or who? How does this?
So I'm not there, and like I said, I'm not a hostage negotiator.
Yeah, we're not.
I know a little bit how this works because in Iraq, there are always intermediaries. Sometimes it was through religious figures, sometimes with non-government organizations. There was both mullahs, and of course, there was, for example, a guy named Reverend Andrew Cannon. He was the Anglican vicar in Baghdad, and he had been in Iraq for 10 years before the war. So he had a lot of relations with Muslim and Shia and Sunni clerics and imams, if you will. So there would be reach out between the religious figures. So that's part of the conversation. There are non-government organizations like the Red Crescent and the Red Cross, which is the Muslim version of the Red Cross. There are conversations happening there because those NGOs are actually operating in Gaza. There isn't a, quote, sit across the table like in Paris between Vietnam and the U.S. negotiating the end, because those are two state actors. So hostage negotiation is going to be behind the scenes in backdoor channels. We know that it's happening in Doha, which is the capital of Qatar, and probably in Egypt as well, because obviously Egypt shares a border with Gaza, and that's where all the humanitarian aid is going through. So there will be some backdoor channels. And we have an Office of Hostage Affairs. I'm not getting the exact title, but we have an ambassador who works on this. He's a close friend. He's a great American. He's an absolute patriot. And he's one of the finest warrior diplomats on planet Earth. I won't mention his name. I know he's generally involved in behind the scenes, and he was involved in getting every American we've gotten out in the last couple of years. He's been involved. He was one of only 2 holdovers from the Trump administration. In fact, he's jokingly, from what I've heard, he's one of 2 Republicans in the entire administration that was appointed, like a presidential appointee position.
Wow.
And he's a great American. There's no better person on planet Earth to do what needs to be done. And I know he's in the center of this right now. I'm assuming Doha, because obviously none of this, there's nothing, and trust me, Hamas and Israel, they hate each other. They're not going to sit across any table. So,
right.
So, and unfortunately, yes, they're American hostages, as are 30 plus nations. I understand.
Correct.
35 I've heard at one point of nationalities.
Yeah.
So it's a very challenging environment. And it is, again, it's not like, Israel on one side, Hamas on the other. But it's back channel discussions. And, and obviously time Israel drops another airstrike or incursion into Gaza, that changes everything.
Are you, let me ask your opinion on it. Were you surprised by the way Hamas was able to pull the initial attack off on October 7th?
Of course. You talk about a country that's had paranoia since its nation's founding.
Yeah.
The scale and scope of what they pulled off, even the glider attack into that concert, my God.
Correct.
You saw the video of these kids who they're all stoned on Molly or
whatever. Yeah.
In the morning, I remember seeing the image. This girl was literally dancing and streaming from her phone. And you see in the background, the gliders coming down.
Creepy.
And, oh, man. And it's, it's horrific. And the fact that, they, as I've been told, because I've been tracking all this news now, that the fighters were told, if you grab a hostage, it's worth $10,000 and we'll give you an apartment.
I've heard that. Did hear that.
So I don't know if they expected to get 200, but good God, this notion that they're doing a humanitarian gesture to let this 85 and 79-year-old grandmothers go. I'm like, their husbands of 50, 60 years are still in your clutches.
Yes.
I get incensed about this notion that it's a humanitarian gesture. I'm like,
no way.
No, how about, they're evil. And I'm on the fence of, I understand why the IDF needs to go in and wipe them out. People don't get it, right? The scale and scope for Israel, because they're so small, it was 15 times the impact of what happened. It'd be 15 9/11s if we put it in proper context. And how did the U.S. respond?
Yep.
2 decades, $10 trillion, whatever the number is. We launched everyone. Every man or woman who ever spent a day in uniform, reserves or otherwise, got at least one deployment to spend a year away from their family and lose buddies and or not themselves and maybe limbs. So we spent our national treasure and blood and all the rest of it. And I can't say we got a lot out of it because look at how we exited Afghanistan.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
But Israel has every right to go in and exact. It's not a pound of flesh. It's to make sure it doesn't happen again because apparently the country was very divided. There were a lot of people in Israel that were pushing for the end of this. They were opening up workers from 10,000. They were going to go to 20,000 workers from Gaza that were able to come into Israel and work, buy a home, support a family back in Gaza. But Hamas didn't want that. Hamas did not want that. They knew there was about to be an historic agreement between Israel and Saudi Arabia. They wanted that crushed, and now that's been crushed. So
it's been crushed.
And people, this notion, I'm sorry. I've only spent 30 years of my life in that region, going back to 1992 when I deployed for the first time. There will never be peace in the Middle East.
Yep.
You're right.
I'm sorry.
We don't know. We don't know the experience you do, but we feel that. We just feel that it's just not.
Yeah.
There's just no way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, there can't be because you're trying to. I don't know how you can possibly expect peace when you see the horrific attack and what Hamas and Hezbollah does and ISIS and Al Qaeda, what that whole mindset of terrorists do to people. You can't. There's no peaceful unless, for some grace of God, there's regime changes or whatever happens in that region. That's the only possible outcome for peace, isn't it?
I hate to say this because I went in believing that we were going to plant a flag of democracy in the heart of the Middle East with the invasion of Iraq. And I believed it. And I will share a vignette. I'm in Iraq. Baghdad fell. Saddam fled. And within a week, I'm in there with a group that was trying to bring. It aired as the Continental Congress. They tried to bring in leaders from around Iraq to rebuild the new future. Mm-hmm. And the only rule was they couldn't be a Ba'athist. And so they brought in everyone from doctors and educators and teachers, and even people, we brought about 1,000 people into Iraq, into the convention center. And then we let them go at it. And some Iraqi expats had crafted a 10-point version of the Bill of Rights. And it was kind of it came out of the Quran, and it was very Quranic, but it was pretty much like kind of those universal principles, right? Mm-hmm. Remember the Congress, we brought all these guys in to try and come up with the Bill of Rights and all. Same kind of scenario. And it was being marketed by the Defense Department. Rumsfeld, by the way. They wanted this to be this huge success. So they brought 1,000 Arabs into the room, and they tried to get them to agree on something, which is impossible.
Yeah.
We started at 9 in the morning, and 9 at night. They had only agreed on one point, and it was like they literally had a PowerPoint, put the principle up on the screen, and then everyone would get up and just shout. And this was crazy. This whole day long, just nothing but Arabs standing up and shouting at each other. And at one point, a young Arab male, about my age at the time, I was like early 30s, and he stands up and he just keeps shouting over and over again. Iraq and again, an American Iraqi guy sitting outside was translating for me. And the guy just kept screaming, America, America, American. He basically kept saying, Iraq for Iraq, America must leave now. And he kept repeating that. And he goes on and on and on, won't shut up. And finally, someone stands up and shouts him down and says, yes, Iraq for Iraq, but we need America to stay here long enough to teach us about this thing called democracy and keep us safe, and then they can go. And the person that stood up to that male and got him to shut up was a female, was a woman.
Impressive.
I was shocked. And there was a handful of women invited to this conference. She was obviously an important woman. She was either a doctor or an educator or something. I was so impressed. And I remember I was so inspired. I wrote an email out to my friends back at home, and I said, folks, we have a long way to go, but Saddam is no longer. Iraq is going out on this new step towards democracy, and I see hope. And that was in 2000 and the invasion, 2003.
Yeah.
I tell you, I came back a year later, 2004, to the Iraqi kidnapping crisis, and I realized, man, we're not going to do this here. And I hate to say it, but the divide within Islam, I mean, it's even worse between Sunni Shia. I mean, ultimately they come after infidels. They want to kill the Jews, but people don't believe this. But I'd always ask when I came back and I was speaking about the kidnapping crisis in Iraq, because you both had Sunni groups and Shia groups involved in these kidnappings. And I would ask someone, I said, if you had an Al-Qaeda kidnapping ring and they had held an American soldier hostage, an Iraqi soldier who was Shia hostage, and a message comes down from Osama bin Laden himself that said, you can let one of them go and the other you execute. And I'd ask the obvious, well, who do you think they're going to execute? Now, every American, well, who do you think they would execute? Just out of curiosity.
Well,
from leading into it, I kind of guess what it is, but I would guess American first, right?
Yeah.
Of course.
Right.
Of course.
Right. They're going to kill the American. No, they would rather kill a Shia. It was that insane about how they were so brutal when Al-Qaeda or Sunni groups grabbed an Iraqi soldier that was Shia, they were ruthless. I mean, the executions were, I had to wake up every morning. I used to watch beheading videos every morning over coffee. That's how I started my day. Videos. And the way the hardcore Salafist or ideologically driven jihadists, they show no quarter to anyone. And the reason they do the beheadings is there is a surah in the Quran, a statement that says, smite them at their necks whenever you meet them. Okay. Smite them at their necks. That one line is interpreted literally, and that's the line that they use to justify why they still do beheadings. And it's barbaric, but again, that's what drives them.
Yeah.
And I will never forget, I'm not a month into my tour. It's August of July. I've been there a month. I'm 22-hour days dealing with all these kidnappings. We get this frantic note that a CIA operative had been beheaded, and it was posted online. And I was like, oh my God. So we're in the embassy. I have an Iraqi translator there. and we get around the computer, we pull up this video that they had posted to the internet. And it had a guy, it was a grainy picture. Someone with a handheld camera was kind of holding it. It was kind of shaky. And it showed a guy in a chair. He was tied to a chair. And he was obviously an Iraqi. He wasn't, unless he was a source or spy, but he wasn't a, quote, white guy. I thought CIA meant one of our operatives guys.
Yeah.
But what it was is they had taken a piece of cardboard and wrote on a piece of cardboard in like a black crayon. It said CIA, and they hung that around his neck, a piece of cardboard, and then they were holding up his ID card. And his ID card had this on the bottom of the card. It was issued out by us, by the U.S. government or the U.S. military, and it had a yellow band on the bottom. And that yellow band meant that was someone who had been vetted enough that he could come on to an American base and clean the shitters. Like he got a day job for probably $5 a day, $10 a day, simply to support his family. But to the group that grabbed him, because he was now working with the infidels, it meant he was a collaborator or a CIA spy. So they took a snapshot of him holding up the ID card. And then the next image, it's about a 3-minute video. The next 40 seconds showed all these jihadists standing around him. He's tied to a chair, and he had been roughed up. You could tell that he was, his face was bruised up, and they were standing behind him posing like they had captured an antelope or something. They're taking a trophy photo. And then the third splice video that comes in, it all ran in about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes long, showed a guy standing there with a broadsword. And the whole time the interpreter is telling me what they're saying. And the guy standing there broadsword is saying, he has violated the tenets of Islam. This is the fate that awaits all of you who work for the infidel. And then he proceeds to start chopping off his head with this broadsword. And the guy filming has all the guys behind him. And as this head starts coming off and the blood starts, it was any worse than any horror movie you've ever seen. You can hear the guys behind the cameraman. They're all in a frenzy going, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. They're incensed. They're like getting having an orgasm.
It's euphoria for them.
And the interpreter is sitting there going, God is great. God is great. God is great. And I'm sitting there watching this going, I studied Catholic religion, the Bible, the Old Testament, and they all have the origins back to Abraham. We all share a common lineage. And I remember saying to myself, there's no fucking way. Probably, I don't know if we can use that word.
Yes, you can. Yeah, you can. Absolutely.
We share a same lineage to this ideology. I just, as a Christian, thought, how in the hell can you do this? Because you're doing it to a fellow Muslim who might be Sunni and or Shia. But to you, because they worked on a base with the Americans, they were spies, and therefore, this is what they deserved.
This is unbelievable.
And I'm telling you, it's like when the media networks call me, it's for bad news. And actually the worst news on planet Earth, because I came back from Iraq and I did a speaking junket for a couple of years. I was doing some CNN stuff and all the networks actually. And then it kind of died off a bit. And then ISIS comes back. And the next thing you know, I'm on Anderson Cooper opening segment Monday through Friday, 5 nights in a row. And all the networks, I was doing 2-3 interviews a day. And I will be honest, I haven't done an interview in 5+ years, maybe longer. And maybe 7 years. Because I don't need it. I'm not trying to talk on anything outside my realm of expertise. I can do the SEAL stuff, but frankly, there's enough SEALs doing podcasts, and I don't have the SEAL stories that people are expecting, nor that story's been told. The leadership and all that. A lot of great things about being a team guy, and I love it. But I don't add any. I'm not going to add any more to the lexicon of team guy leadership lessons. But in the one area that I do know more about than damn near anyone, it's these jihadist kidnapping rings. But I hate the fact that I have to get my phone blown up. And to be frank, I have never done more interviews in my life. And in fact, 4 days ago, I think I did 8 interviews in the space of a 24-hour period. And I went from CNN to Fox and Friends, to Sky News in Australia, 2 channels in Canada, and then the BBC in London, all in the space of 24 hours. And I'm not shooting. I'm not reaching out to these networks and going, "Hey guys, you need me?" They're paying, and I guarantee. I mean, I just got an interview popped up right before we came on, which is why I just jumped it 2 minutes before. But I guarantee I'm going to hang up with you, and because I just did a spot on CNN, I'll have 2 messages on my phone.
Mhm.
And Newsmax wants me on tonight, and Chris Cuomo. And the irony is Cuomo, I wasn't a big fan of when he was at CNN. I kind of was.
I know. What happened here?
Yeah, he's changed.
He's actually. I mean, there've been good interviews. I've done 2 of them so far, and I maybe drank the Kool-Aid because he's being. I don't sit and watch a show for an hour, and I can't speak to it. But he is. When I listen to the opening segment before I come on about Gaza, I'm like, yeah, you're saying everything I would say, and the guy's got a platform, and that's why this notion that we should only go on the one network that we all trust, quote, bullshit. You got to get out there and share it, and we need to do a better job. Our country is so divided, and we've got to get back on track about having an honest debate, and I'm all about talking back and forth. And I'll talk to anyone. And we live in a society where people don't want to hear the truth, or they're going to say, "Oh, I don't want that speaker to come on my campus." Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
College is to go and expand your horizons. Listen to other opinions and let them make their argument. Because I've always said this: there's 3 chapters in everyone's life, right? First third of our life, we're fed everything, and we don't. Our brain has been molded, and we're sponges, and then we leave, but we get into college and we've been molded by our pastors, our priests, our parents, right? Everything we think is what we've been taught by someone else. You go to college to start to challenge those assumptions that your parents or your religious elders or whoever have put, passed down to you. And you should be expanding your horizons. And because
you should.
Yeah. I mean, living
I think universities in general have I think that's a big cause of why they don't. And has, again, perception, been a long time since I've been to college, right? But I think the universities are breeding that lack of acceptance, for one, because a lot of universities aren't allowing speakers on. So you're telling your students that, hey, it's okay, scream loud enough, they won't come on. You don't have to listen to that ideology. And then we breed them to be these adults and journalists. I use that very loosely. And they maintain that mindset where I don't have to listen. This is my opinion, and this is my thought process, and nobody else's matters. So I do admire you for going on, any platform you can, because for one, it shouldn't be a bipartisan political issue at all. I mean, we're talking about kidnapping of Americans and other countries. That should be something we're all against. And I know we're probably running short on time and stuff. I got 5 billion questions, but one I really want to get to is, and this is domestically now, we have an open border. We've seen it. We've seen the numbers there. It's incredible what's pouring over here, and it's incredible what we don't know, at least from our perspective, what's pouring over here. How do you feel? And just an opinion or maybe some knowledge on it about potential kidnappings here domestically by, jihadists, and
I'm
that's a concern.
I'm more terrified of, honestly, and I don't know why it hasn't happened in America yet, is more suicide bombings. Suicide bombings happened every day in the Middle East, every day. IED suicide bombings, and I've always thought my biggest fear would be 3 schools in the country: an elementary school in Arizona, a community college in Iowa, a liberal arts college in the Northeast. 3 gunmen walk into a school cafeteria at lunch and take over the cafeteria simultaneously, and they all have vests on. What would that do to the nation? And how? I don't think it'd be that hard to go off, right? I mean, now schools are much more alert about certain things. Let's be honest, but there's always gaps in areas where you could do that. I mean, most schools, if they have a security officer, they have one. You put enough surveillance on them, but I'm just saying, I mean, for me, the fallout of Afghanistan, and the administration bragged about the 100,000 they evacuated. Well, I can tell you, as one of the core guys with a thing called Task Force Pineapple and about 4 or 5 other groups that were helping get people out, we know for a fact that the Afghans that worked with us, the Afghan commandos, the guys that fought alongside Special Forces, Green Berets, Navy SEALs, Rangers, MARSOC, we were trying to get our guys we knew out. I personally knew and vetted. They were stopped by the Taliban. They were not allowed to get out on those planes. In fact, we're still trying to get thousands out that have been abandoned by our government. But they put 100,000 on those planes and got them out. And you know who vetted those 100,000? The Taliban.
Oh, nice.
So, and 95% of the 100,000 that ended up in Qatar and ended up on planes to America and elsewhere, they were never really vetted. So if you're concerned about the 51 on the watch list that we don't know about, right? I think it was 51 or whatever the number is.
Yeah.
We got 100,000. And I'm not saying, listen, plenty of those Afghans wanted to get out for freedom, but the Taliban, why wouldn't they have put sleeper cells?
Why not?
How hard would it have been? It's not like there was 100 people got on the plane. 100,000. So
1,000.
I am so terrified that absolutely, well, the consequences of an open border, cities are already falling apart. I mean, the fact that the Democratic, what do you call them, sanctuary cities, mayors, and now governors are now pushing back about the onslaught. Sure. Look at the context of any border city, what has happened to the social services in a border town in Texas or New Mexico or even California, what they're dealing with. And now you've got the cities that have promoted this and allowed this ideology to not have a border. I mean, like I said, how did 81 million people vote for, what has been the obvious, right? Zero borders, climate change. I mean, go back 4 years. Who said it? It's the economy, stupid.
Yeah.
And why don't we go back to that? But there are so many things. The simple question Reagan said: "Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago?"
Yeah.
But we've got such a challenging, like a year from today, we're going to be at war over who we're electing, and damn it, Trump may be in prison and maybe winning the nomination for the president while he's in prison in jail, and he'll pardon himself from the DC brig with all the other January 6 riders.
Sixers,
there indefinitely. So we're in crazy times. We need leadership, and frankly, we need to. I have always said this: the national motto used to be "E pluribus unum," out of one, and we're not that country today. We are so divided, and I think it's by design. I think we're being pushed to be divided. So we're having these little cat fights and not looking at big picture. And it's, as a veteran, as someone who pays attention to what's going on, I'm heartbroken by.
It's got to be somebody, not somebody who has done so much for this country. To see it has to be absolutely heartbreaking. It's unbelievable.
We always say, our favorite saying to say is, we watch this hand because they let us see this hand, but it's the hand that you can't see is what scares us the most. And
absolutely,
and they get what we call them minions. They get their little minions going off on their little thing, whether it's about abortion, whether it's about transgenderism or whatever is out there, right? They get them going, and then deep down they're doing this because they got it's just, we need to get focused as a country. We're going to have disagreements. We're not going to agree with one another. That's just the way we are. But that's what's great about this country. You can disagree, but it's how violent you get when you disagree with this, and then you allow this other stuff to come through. And that's what's going on right now. When we're considered domestic terrorists, basically, from what they say, but we're more dangerous than Al Qaeda or ISIS and it's insulting.
The president goes to an all-black, historically black college and says that, white supremacists are the biggest threat to our society.
Correct.
I look around and go, my entire career in my community, I had minorities obviously serving with me in the teams, but overwhelmingly, my brotherhood is white. They're Irish, they're English, German stock. Still it's just crazy to hear that. And I don't want to hear that said about anyone.
Right.
We shouldn't be divided. We shouldn't be pushing one race. We are the human race. Believe me, it's it's just hard to watch out because, we have now college campuses that are pushing a narrative of anti-Semitism. I mean, I have plenty of Jewish friends that have reached out, and they're scared, and I'd be in, they're nervous to be in place. Think about if you're on campus today and you're Jewish and you're walking past you've just learned that a relative of yours or a cousin or maybe a family member might have been one of the 1,400 massacred,
slaughtered,
murdered, absolutely murdered. And you have to walk past a crowd at your university calling you the enemy, putting it on you, your fault. And I'm sorry. I mean, this occupation of Gaza, the only people occupying Gaza are Hamas.
Mm-hmm.
Israel has not been in Hamas and Gaza for since 2005.
Yep.
Right.
And the billions that have been given to Hamas have been used to build the tunneling systems and to keep their people. I mean, they have not, as people are saying, free Gaza from Hamas. And I wholeheartedly support that because Hamas does not have the best interests. Those guys are living in the 5-star hotels in Doha, Qatar, and Cairo, while civilians that live in the neighborhood are intentionally put in places where they're launching rockets.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And the way the media is so spun up, you saw that strike against the Gazan hospital.
Yeah.
Hamas shot the rocket, knew they shot the rocket, knew where it went, yet claimed it was an Israeli air defense, jet strike.
And then he ran with it.
That story went out around the world, and within hours there were protests at every Israeli embassy around the world and every American embassy in the Middle East.
Correct.
And we haven't even seen, this thing is only going to grow in scale and scope. It's
Everybody knows that sound.
Let me see if I can get that screen back up. I tried. I shut my phone off, and I literally have it on airplane mode, so I don't know why the hell it's ringing.
Yeah. Well,
So-
you're
so
here. It's still,
you don't agree with Congresswoman Tlaib that it was Israel that actually bombed the hospital? She doesn't buy any of it. That it was the
Yeah, and she's still sticking with that.
Yep.
So if you guys can still see me, I just lost
Yeah,
you guys. Can you see me?
Yeah, we can see.
yeah, we
it.
can see you.
All right, let's just keep going because
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
we're,
can always
we're
see-
almost about done. Yeah.
Yeah.
We could talk to you for hours. This is
Yeah, we absolutely could, no doubt.
Right.
And that's the beauty part about a podcast. This kind of stuff happens. Jim's dog barks, all sorts of. That's just the way it works. You know.
my dog would be in here right now jumping on me. But
Yep. Exactly.
what do you guys got for a couple last questions, and then I do need to punch, but I'm happy to come back and join you guys again.
No,
that
I
would
mean,
be
no.
awesome.
That's just listen. You've answered a ton. I mean, there is a million things
Yeah,
that we can go into. They're all going to be revolved probably more around speculation at this point now because we know what's occurred and we know what's at stake and we know besides what's happening in Israel from Hamas. I mean, we've got Chinese jets flying close to our B-52 bombers and I mean, there's all sorts of things going on across the world that is all leading us to think, how big is this going to really get? Maybe you have an opinion on it. I mean, do you think are we looking at full blown kind of World War III stuff? Are we looking at, more just strategic strikes and try to, stop this? How much is China involved in it? What's your thought on it?
And one quick, if I can add, are we still?
okay.
Are we at the beginning of it? I mean, are we involved in it? Have we started it already with a lot of the espionage and stuff like that that's going on, trying to get
I'd say, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, personally, I'm always terrified whenever there's an incident like this in the Middle East because I know that Tehran they have a vision for an apocalyptic ending and at the end of times, and for them it reveals the prophecy of the return for them. They're Allah and the Messenger and all the rest of it. So the wild card is going to be over the next couple of days, weeks. If the offensive begins, what happens? Does Hamas start throwing rockets towards Israel? Do they respond? And then is there a strike? I mean, what happens with the big key player, which is Tehran? So pretty concerned, pretty, and I don't want to get beyond Ukraine or China, which are obviously big things, but, consider where we were 4 years ago to where we are today.
Correct. Well, let's start right away by saying thank you again to the commander for coming on the show. Absolutely 100% such an honor to speak with him. That he gave us his time. As a matter of fact, he was telling CNN, you better hurry up or else, because I got a hard stop for this interview with us, which was pretty impressive. And I appreciate that out of him. And also thank you, Wayne Black, as well again for introducing us to the commander and kind of setting all that up. He's really been our best talent scout.
So maybe, maybe we are doing something right. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, the guy's been amazing, So thank you to both of them. Jim, any thoughts on the interview other than what we've said? I feel like I'm like blowing smoke or kissing. I'm not doing any of that. It was just that impressive to me, and he is that impressive of an individual that I'm just honored that we had that opportunity.
And if anybody watched any interviews with him, because if you go back and you look at, like we did, every station said hostage negotiator. Mm-hmm. He wasn't.
He's an expert. But he's not.
Yeah, he's an expert in terrorist groups and what they do and why they kidnap, how they kidnap,
and the hostages and what they
do. He doesn't negotiate. And
nope.
So, but what I enjoyed about it. The whole interview. But what I enjoyed about it is, guys, we can sit here and say what we think all along. About hostage negotiation. Oh man, I'd stand pat. I'd hold this. I'd hold that. I'd do this. I'd do that.
Yep.
He's an expert.
So
he knows,
and
he knows what. Yeah, he knows what is done, and he's just. I mean, it's puts you in perspective because we all are. We're all. How they put it, we're experts sitting on the couch. We are. We all know.
We're all Monday morning quarterbacks. Yeah. We always do.
Yeah. We all, but it's not. These individuals are on the front line, and they need respect, and it's great. I'm better for interviewing.
I am too.
For talking,
I'm better for knowing him than I was before. Like a lot of guests, but him specifically, I'm just like I feel I'm in a much more, for one, informed. I felt a lot smarter about the whole situation over there, about how we deal with hostages. I mean, we sit there and say, is that a they've always, like you said, they've always negotiated with hostages. You can say it all they want, but they've always negotiated with them. They just never made it public until Obama did. And so that's where the bounties now are on Americans' heads, because they will pay handsomely for them.
I have a friend that was a Ranger. So I always would tell him he's my hitman. He's my guy that if I want to send him out, so on and so forth. My father was a paratrooper. Stupid for jumping out of an airplane, but
unbelievable. Though, still, the bravery involved in all that.
But I'm sorry, both of you. I think Dan beat you both. I'm just saying. Navy SEAL.
Most. He beats most, if not all.
Yeah.
But anyways, thank you to him again for coming on. We look forward to him coming back and telling us more stories. There's unfortunately all this stuff's going on around the world. He's an expert on it. You can see him on Fox News. He's been on Fox and Friends just recently. He was on CNN last week. He's all over. He's making the circuit. Hell, you probably saw it there. He was getting text after text, call after call during the interview. People like, hey, we want you on, need you on, So for him to give us that much time, and sorry about the end of it. He got so many like his phone just kind of, or what he was recording on. I think it was his phone. I'm not sure. Just kind of went off there. So we couldn't, formally thank him. We did, but you didn't see that because it just ended abruptly about the last 5 minutes of the interview. So he'll be back. We'll make sure we get him back on to talk further about that. But yeah, the fact that he gave us almost an hour.
Yeah, because I'd honestly like to
certainly appreciate that.
It's definitely important because the Israeli war is. I cannot stress this enough how important it was for that, because I don't care what anybody says. It's when we went through 9/11, we needed our allies to support us. We didn't need them to do what we had to do. We didn't. We needed their support, and they gave us their support. Israel doesn't need us. In all honesty, outside of Turkey, I don't think they would have a problem wiping out anybody that in that region that wants to come at them. They've got more firepower. They fly our jets better than we do. So I don't. Now Turkey's different because I think they're like the fourth largest army. That overwhelming force would eventually just get to your point. But
correct.
They need our support, whether it's boots on the ground. Whether it's Hellfire missiles being fired they really do. Just like we asked for their help and received it during 9/11, folks.
That's right.
Let's not forget
they're
who
our number
was
one
there for
ally
us
in the Middle East. And so all these Palestinian protests, all these ignorant idiots out there that are, there's a lot of, so I'm old enough to remember Asian hate when Trump said the virus came from China.
Yep.
Right.
Oh yeah.
But nothing about Jewish hate now, right? It's okay just to go out and do all that, right? Yep. So folks,
I don't have his name,
but nut house out there.
Did you see the billionaire Jewish person? My God, I wish I remembered his name, but he is a big donor for Cornell University.
That's right. He pulled his money. Not anymore. And his quote was, "These kids have shit for brains."
Yeah. Well, they do,
and
it's elementary school, middle school, and high school that's doing it right now. These kids have no freaking
whole
clue.
Liberal agenda. By design, like we've talked about.
And it's just like anything else with the Black Lives Matter and the Antifa protesters that most of them are white, right?
Yep, correct.
It's because they are taught that. They're not taught reality. They're not taught what really is going on. And
nobody's born racist.
Right.
You're taught that. You are absolutely, you're not born a communist. You are born in those countries, but that is that is what you're taught.
Yep.
That it's all what they're being taught, from parents to teachers to all the way up to the spectrum. That's what's happening, folks. Thank you very much. Long show. We get it, but certainly well worth it. We know it was. And we think you will know it as well. As this is, as you are seeing this, it is Halloween. Jim, your Dylan Mulvaney costume looks spot on today. Thank you for dressing up. Folks, make sure you're safe out there when you're taking the kids trick or treating, please. Crazy world out there. So just pay attention and be smart and be safe. And Jim, anything else to add on this Halloween day?
No, it's actually supposed to snow, and I guarantee you, not in Florida. There's a chance.
It's cold though. It's like really the cold front's coming all the way here.
72.
So. Jim, it's going to be high 61 tomorrow.
Oh,
Jim,
I'm sorry.
High 61.
The potential snow. It doesn't snow at 61, Dale.
You think it does? It might as well. If it's going to be cold, then I want to see snow. So
but
you're right.
So there's a chance, but those kids will still be out.
Oh, they'll be out. I remember taking the kids out on Halloween, and we get all these costumes ready, and then they got to put their snowsuits on to go trick or treat. Like,
those parents, man, parents that walked with the kids.
God bless them. God bless you.
We did it. I mean, we
all did it. So, we all did it, but we don't have to anymore.
I get to sit and watch.
That's right. Jim, happy Halloween to you and yours. Folks, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Two Guys, One Coup. We will be back Thursday. Until then, Jim, goodbye. God bless America, and we'll talk to you soon. See you, bye.
You've been listening to the Two Guys, One Coup podcast with Dale and Jim. Remember, you can watch on YouTube and Rumble and listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And if you like what you hear, go ahead and give us a 5-star review. We really appreciate it, and it helps others find us when searching for podcasts. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and TikTok. Just search for Two Guys, One Coup. That's the number 2, guys, and the number 1, Coup, C-O-U-P. Thanks again for listening to the Two Guys, One Coup podcast, and God bless the United States of America.